Hello. Since a recent creative breakthrough, I've been in super motivational life guru mode, and today I want to share a key to success that I think is extremely valuable. In December of 2021, I interviewed Dave Narciso, the longtime drummer for the indie alternative rock band Throwing Muses. While there were plenty of insightful little nuggets of information that I gained from talking to him, the one that's been stuck in my head lately is this concept.
The sound was also based on what we loved. Like, we wanted to be X. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're an LA punk band. That's who we wanted to be. And in that great, like, what I think makes a lot of great bands or music is being shitty at copying somebody else. Like, that's when it really, you end up with something new.
Yeah.
If you're really good at copying somebody, it's, you know, you can do that really well. It can be impressive, but we wanted to sound like X and we didn't really know how
Something else happened.
Something else happened,
Yeah.
Exactly.
This theory might sound scary on the surface. Audiences typically frown upon the idea of somebody copying what another already did. But realistically, like Dave said, this is an ideal path for creation in general and ultimately bringing something new and potentially innovative into the world. Once we as an audience have a clearer perspective on the creative process, we'll understand that copying, inspiration, stealing, paying homage, all of these things can kind of be one and the same. I don't feel like I need to give some philosophical history lesson to hammer this next point home, but even the most innovative minds ever, whether they be in music, film, literature, etc., can be looked at as slightly altered, copy and pasted versions of whatever the previous thing was. Aphex Twin is a prime example of a musician that is known for originality and doing stuff his own way. He grew up in some secluded town in the middle of nowhere and would mess with the hardware of synthesizers until he made sounds that hadn't been invented yet, or whatever those stories about him are. But without somebody like Brian Eno or a band like Kraftwerk coming before him, the entire trajectory of Aphex Twin would 1000% be totally different. Aphex Twin's greatest ideas did not come out of nowhere. And then Aphex Twin's inspiration, Brian Eno, was a super fan of Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground, who loved Bob Dylan, who loved even older people. You get the gist. People talk about Young Thug being one of the most influential voices for music today, but he wouldn't have been here without Lil Wayne. And no matter who we want to talk about in whatever field, they are simply a product of a love for what they're doing.
The sound was also based on what we loved,
combined with their influences.
What I think makes a lot of great bands is being shitty at copying somebody else.
Quentin Tarantino is one of the most critically acclaimed and commercially successful directors of all time. He has spoken consistently over his career that, quote, stealing from his predecessors is how he makes his art. But no matter how many times he might reference or steal a shot, and trust me, he's stolen a lot, each and every one of his movies are his own. Tarantino wanted to be Jean-Luc Godard and Sergio Leone. He was shitty at copying them, and he ended up with something new. Far too often, I know myself, and I'm sure many other creatives out there, struggle with trying to make their next big thing completely from scratch. Oh, trust me, I had this totally original idea one time, the video blew up, I can do that again if I really think. But no. Trapping yourself in your own head is an easy way to get paralyzed by your own ideas. There are times when being alone can feel the most freeing, but you gotta remember how you got there in the first place. When I started this channel, I wanted to be like my favorite YouTubers, guys like the Needledrop, Nerdwriter, Nakey Jakey, etc. I was shitty at copying them, something else happened, and now I finally feel like I'm falling into my own style and voice. And so much of that comes down to acknowledging that, hey, if I ever have any kind of idea that I think is totally original, It's coming from somewhere and something that has already been done. Pablo Picasso, another artist who you may or may not have heard of, is widely quoted for saying, "Good artists borrow, great artists steal." Now let's talk about the difference between the two, and ultimately the big distinction Dave made that goes along with Picasso and Tarantino's mantras too, that I haven't really addressed so far. To put things into Picasso's terms, Dave and his band did not borrow, they were shitty at copying X, and then something completely new happened instead. They took what they wanted and left the rest behind. Great artists steal. I know they're kind of a punching bag at this point, but Greta Van Fleet are the most obvious example of the past few years of a band that borrows. They're too good at copying somebody else, which in this case is Led Zeppelin. Without including enough of your own unique perspective, you will turn into a blander, more forgettable version of the thing that already exists. During the mid to late 2010s, that triplet flow popularized by Migos was everywhere in hip-hop. And because rappers weren't putting enough of their own spin on it, you had legends saying that everybody sounded the same, and audiences everywhere were claiming that a given rapper was biting Migos style. But when somebody like Kendrick Lamar uses that triplet flow and elevates it for an album that would go on to win a Pulitzer Prize, nobody is gonna dare call that man a blander, forgettable version of Migos. Great artists steal. Before I leave, I want to give a uniquely modern internet blueprint of what we've talked about today. After dropping her debut album Stranger in the Alps in 2017, Phoebe Bridgers was clearly one of the premier up-and-coming singer-songwriters of the time. By mid-2020, a few months into the pandemic, she released her second solo record, Punisher, to widespread acclaim and a lot more attention in the public eye as well. With these anxiety-ridden lyrics, chock full of imagery, often describing the monumental lows of her relationships with lovers, family members, and so on, you know a Phoebe Bridgers kind of song when you hear one. Deeply sad, a dark and twisted sense of humor, very specific details about whatever's going on. That's a Phoebe song. Jensen McRae is an up-and-coming folk pop singer-songwriter who was seeing small but decent success post-2019 after graduating college and releasing a couple singles. On January 14th, 2021, she tweeted, "In 2023, Phoebe Bridgers is gonna drop her third album, and the opening track will be about hooking up in the car while waiting in line to get vaccinated at Dodger Stadium, and it's gonna make me cry." That's a relatable, funny hypothetical. Good tweet.
Good tweet, good tweet.
The next day, she tweeted a video of herself actually playing and singing the preemptive cover of what she imagined that song would sound like. It was ridiculously spot on, but much more than just parody. It was evident that she was coming from a place of loving Phoebe's music, but this wasn't a mimic. Jensen's own skill, her own perspective, added to this and helped it become something on its own. Next thing you know, both of these tweets blow up. Tens of thousands of people are getting introduced to this talented singer-songwriter. Phoebe Bridgers retweets it. Everybody on that side of indie music Twitter saw and complimented Jensen on what started out as a joke, but was turning into a song that new fans were craving to get a full version of. The full version eventually came as a track called Immune, which I'm obsessed with. It currently has over 7.6 million streams on Spotify, and Jensen's career has taken off considerably with strong recommendations from NPR, Rolling Stone, Vulture, The Fader, and more. This is a person whose music was already good. The single Wolves from 2020 is immaculate, but whichever way you want to put it, Jensen wanting to sound like Phoebe but something else happening, or her being a great artist and stealing, there's a brilliant musician with a phenomenal voice, seemingly unmatched power and range, poignant, well-structured songs featuring wildly emotive and moving lyrics that came out the other side. This video has been full of potential butterfly effects about what would this person be doing if this artist didn't do this first, but I can end this with a declarative statement. After releasing her preemptive, hypothetical Phoebe Bridgers cover on Twitter, a lot of people discovered the magic of Jensen McRae. These new fans went on to listen and share top-notch songs like My Ego Dies at the End, Adam's Ribs, and P.S. This is one of my favorite live performances ever, of all time in history. And if you do one thing after watching this video, go watch that one. Then try to steal what she's doing and make something new in the process. Hey, thank you for watching that video. If you want to support the channel, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. You can follow me on social media at RenshawHS. You can buy my merch, support my Patreon, and thank you again. I will see you soon.